I have been waiting for this conversation for quite some time. I hope you will enjoy this conversation. I know I will. Sah D'Simone.
I had started this international fashion magazine with a couple friends, and I really thought, I was like, oh my God, I found the thing that I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. My business partner and best friend decides to buy me out of the company that I invite her. So the heartbreak was like enormous. It kind of just happened really quickly. I was very honest on social media about like my struggles with suicidal ideation, with depression, with addiction, with anxiety, all the demons that were visiting me, and then me befriending them and learning from them. And
Befriending them, that's such an interesting word.
my ask for everybody would be to go be of service to those in need, and you're going to be surprised. That's going to be the biggest antidepressant dose that you've ever taken.
Welcome back. Back in 2021, when I was doing the tour of Scary Smart, I sort of felt a little bit of a sense of urgency. I think a lot of people realize why that is now, with AI being really the central topic of conversation around many things. And Scary Smart was predicting a lot of what's happening right now and asking for a call to action. So I really pushed myself when I was publishing that book. I did, if I remember correctly, a series of 25 podcasts in less than 2 weeks, one after the next. And basically, there were days where 2 or 3 podcast recordings where I was the guest would pop up in my calendar, and I would show up and start to have a conversation. And some of those conversations went really far. You know, the Stephen Bartlett podcast, for example, was extremely successful, several millions of downloads, and it was the most shared podcast globally in the entire world back in 2022. Lots of memorable conversation happened within those 2 weeks period. But one very specific podcast actually stood out in my mind because, I didn't pre-plan any of this. My calendar would tell me to show up at some place or a Zoom call, and I would show up, and there I am, and in front of me is a very, very flamboyant, very artistic, clearly queer host that actually was hosting the one of the top 100 shows in spirituality in the US, which is a podcast called Sassy Spirituality. And Sassy Spirituality is basically a spiritual show talking about spiritual topics. And I was very surprised, and I think the host was as surprised. And yet we had the most incredible conversation ever. A conversation that went back and forth between AI and spirituality, and how we can use some of the knowledge that we see here to actually revisit some of our spiritual beliefs and teachings. And so, I really liked the host, Sah D'Simone. And I said to myself, when my podcast was big enough, I was going to host Sah and have a conversation with him about some of what we spoke about during his podcast. Go back and listen to it if you have a chance. It was really a very interesting view of AI. Anyway, it turns out that Sah, just so that you know how uninformed I am, has close to 500,000 followers on Instagram. He is an artist, a mystic, a spiritual teacher. He is a best-selling author, and of course, he's a top-rated podcast host. He actually invented or created a method that was called the Sah method, which is Somatic Activated Healing. That was very, very supportive by Deepak Chopra, who went on to call him a radical spiritual teacher. Sah has a very strong belief that joy and authenticity are truly on the path to enlightenment. He tries to advocate that healing comes from within, it comes from connecting to our bodies, and that you can be whoever you are and be spiritual and be a spiritual teacher and be a seeker in many ways. Sah has, published another book recently, the book called Sassy Spirituality, as you can imagine, the 8 radical steps to activate your innate superpower. I have been waiting for this conversation for quite some time because I believe that Sah actually radiates what he advocates, joy and authenticity. I hope you will enjoy this conversation. I know I will. Sah D'Simone.
Hi.
Oh, it's been such a long time. I have been waiting for this since 2021, man. Come on. Don't play hard to get.
Really? Oh my goodness. I just found out about it, to be honest. I think the team was sheltering me from overdoing, but I would have said yes to this right away. Oh my goodness. I'm honored.
It's been on my mind, I have to admit, since our conversation. I don't know if you recall the time when we did artificial intelligence, and we were both caught off guard. It's like, why is this guy here? It's like, why are we talking about AI? And I was like, okay, spiritually sassy. That's really not the topic. That's not what I'm here to talk about today. But it was so much fun, and you're such a wonderful human. I absolutely, I would say it was one of my favorite conversations around Scary Smart ever, actually.
Oh, thank you, darling. Thank you. Yeah, and honestly, you blew my mind. You opened my world to a whole nother way of thinking about artificial intelligence and like looking at technology. And I think a lot of people in my community felt the same, or they were like, oh, so we really do have to do this thing and like not be afraid of it. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. I actually have to say, you also blew my mind. I think one of the things that I was asked for the very first time when we had that conversation was the link really between spirituality and intelligence, and what is creation then if we have machines that are created by us, but that are almost, I would probably say, totally sentient in every possible way. So interesting times, my friend, interesting times.
Yeah, here navigating life, and it's full. Life is very full. That's really
what I
the
agree,
best.
Sah. Do you feel that? I feel there is something in this last 6 to 8 months, I would say, where, it feels like, there is a river stream against every one of us. It's a little bit more difficult, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, and personally, my mom died.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah, thank you.
When?
Thank you, my dear. So it's been, she died December 25th. 2022. So it's very recent, and we went, I mean, to kind of make a long story short, I was in a 30-day silent retreat in Nepal, in Kathmandu. Halfway through the retreat, actually a week before going to the retreat, I had all these panic attacks, which I haven't had in like 8 years. And then I had conjunctivitis twice, and which I don't remember ever having it. Maybe when I was a young boy. So I had all these like physiological symptoms, kind of pointing to something really, really bad was going to happen, really tragic was going to happen, or it was happening. In retrospect, looking back, it was the connection that I had with my mom. It's very deep. So my body was already sort of showing me that like things, my view of the world would change, the way I felt about myself, and then my body would change. So halfway through the retreat, I'm like, I can't be in this retreat. I have a feeling something bad's happening with my mom, although she's been sick for 4 years. So it wasn't like it was a surprise, because, you stay hopeful when, I worked so hard to provide her all these holistic treatments and all these different, healing modalities all over. The next thing she was going to do was a treatment in Switzerland. We were scheduled, paid the deposit for her to be there in January. So maybe 6 or 7 days before she was about to embark on that journey, she died. But essentially halfway through the retreat, I started having these awful feelings, and and I'm feeling really disconnected from my body, really disconnected from my body, almost like I'm watching my life, but feeling like it's not my life. If you're
Oh,
talking to a
wow.
therapist, and if you're talking to a therapist, and if they're going to pathologize that feeling, they may say it's a derealization or depersonalization, dissociation, essentially.
Mm.
So it was really difficult to navigate that, and then I left there thinking, okay, it's something wrong with me. I need to go take care of myself. I shouldn't be in this austere environment of a monastery in Nepal right now. It wasn't the first time I've done a long retreat, so it wasn't a new thing for me. But then I go to Bali. I'm traveling with my partner, and my sister and I and my partner were at the retreat together. But then we leave my sister at the monastery, and me and Ben go off to Indonesia, to Bali. I can dance there. I can eat really good food. I can chant the names of God. I can meditate. I can be in a really beautiful, safe environment, very conducive for the practice. A few days there, I was like, why am I here? I should be next to my mom. So
Oh, yeah. You feel it now very, very
I
clearly.
was now I was just like more alive than ever. And then, my dad and my brother aren't sharing like the entirety or the profundity of the situation that they're in, how critical things are. So I book a ticket for Saturday, and this is like maybe Wednesday. And I'm like, oh mom, I'm gonna be there Saturday. Can't wait to see you. I'm still talking to her like this on FaceTime. And that was, and then that Wednesday was the last time I talked to her ever. Yeah. So, and then arriving in Brazil, she was in an induced coma. And so then she wasn't coherent in a ways that, I am used to talking to her. Um, so she waited, there was a blessing in there. It's not all a blessing. It's not all, filled with like meaningful spiritual experience. No, I'm in the thick of it still. I'm really angry and devastated and heartbroken and disillusioned and questioning my doctrine and just questioning pretty much everything. So it's a good time to talk to me because I'm raw and open.
You
So
always
then she
have been when we
died.
spoke, Sah. So,
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I think something that has happened with my mom's death, it's no tolerance for. I think I used
yeah.
to tolerate it a little bit and people and experiences and things, and now it's just like I have zero tolerance.
Is she your first dear loss? Like, did you lose
Yeah,
it? Oh
that's
my
right. Yeah.
God.
And my mom wasn't, I understand that this is a rare thing that I had with my mom. I think
Mm.
I mean, she was my best friend. I talked to her like 3 times a day. It wasn't like I'll talk to mom
Mm.
once a month or like, see you at Christmas. It wasn't like that at all. It was just like I feel like I lost a leg. So I'm just like learning to walk again without a leg. So um it's to say the very least, I am navigating tremendous paradox right now.
Yeah.
How can I still be here and inspired to talk to you, someone that I look up to, that I'm inspired by, while still tending to my broken heart? How can I see beauty, in the world around me while still being really disillusioned and heartbroken? So it's this ongoing paradox that I'm living in, which is opening me up to understand myself and the world in a whole new way. So that's what's going on.
That is a lot. I mean, I don't know. Ali, my son, left us 9 years ago, 8 years ago now, 2014.
I remember you telling me about it.
And it just doesn't go away, Sah. It's quite interesting. Huh? This kind of I miss him, it just doesn't go away. So the way you describe your mom being your best friend, your ally, for me, Ali was my best friend. He was my ally. He was my coach. And you described that you lost a leg and learning to walk. I promise you, I feel a missing part right here, bottom right side of my heart. And it's physical. It is not and I went to a lot of holistic healers. I don't go, but I know quite a few of them. And they say, yes, there is a trapped emotion or a trapped energy in that place of your body. Yeah, it just doesn't go away. It really
Yeah.
doesn't. What is your view of death? What is death?
I mean, see, this is the part that I'm like questioning my doctrine, as being a Buddhist coming up to 10 years, growing up Catholic and then changing my religion and adopting an entire new path. Um, when, I mean, this question comes with like so much.
Oh yeah, it is the
It's
question.
so
It is
loaded,
the
it's so
question. Yeah,
big, and it's also so juicy, right?
yeah.
Um, I think, look, with my mom's death, sometimes I like to adopt the Christian view more than the Buddhist view, to be very honest with you, because I rather think that she is fully healed, liberated with her mom, her dad, her brother, her friends who've passed in this beautiful heavenly realm. I like that view, and that view brings me comfort. However, in the doctrine that I have adopted and studied and practiced in, it says that 49 days after she died on this plane, she's reincarnated somewhere else. So we, as part of me, my sister, my partner, my dad, and my brother, were all here on the 49th day. We Santa Monica, California. We all went out to the ocean and did a ritual, prayed over these flowers and offered them to the ocean. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that in short, we just did a ritual on the 49th day, praying for her rebirth to be at a higher realm, to be at a where her conditions in the next life are more developed for liberation, that she may become a Buddha, that she may be completely free. And so I'm navigating, like doing that ritual, and then having this part of me like being like, I don't believe in this, but I'm still doing it because, like, who are we to say that that's not the path, or this is the path? Are the Christians who hold the high truth, or the Buddhists who hold the truth?
Nobody
Who are
does.
we to say who holds the truth?
Yeah.
So I'm in this like difficult place where I am just kind of doing everything and just adopting more of a sort of philosophical view.
Beautiful.
Instead of having this or that. And then on top of all of that, like, the guru that I took refuge with in Nepal in 2014, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, said to one of his disciples, someone who's really close to us, my sister and I, said that she is reborn in a pure land. So she's like, considered, for perhaps the Christian doctrine, more like an angel realm or the realm of the gods, So that was nice to hear. That was like really nice to hear, I did talk to a medium, maybe a month after my mom died. And it was very real that my mom was there, because I was, for those of you who are on video, you could see my shirt during the medium session was closed like this. So you couldn't tell that 3 days earlier, I hadn't gotten my mom's tattooed right here on my chest, So the fact that my mom was telling the medium through that mediumship call that I like, she's like, the medium is translating what my mom is saying. And the way she was translating, she's like, there's something carved, there's something painted in this area. She's saying that she really likes it. And I was like, oh no. And that's when I started, crying and wailing, because I was like, okay, it's mom there, really. Because there was, her name's here with me now. So, to kind of round this up, I think we have to make up our own view of what happens after death. I think we have to find a doctrine, a path that we relate to. I think if the religion you adopted doesn't land, then find something else.
I found that to be very interesting in my own path, Sah. So because my life, I was born a Muslim, and I became very religious at a young age, and then I sort of proclaimed myself agnostic, and then did what I understand. The only thing I understand is mathematics. So I worked on that, what I call the math of the divine, basically, which got me to a conviction that there is something out there, right? It's not a belief, because remember, there is a higher power. Of course, that higher power is non-physical, so we don't really whoever tries to describe it to you, whichever religion tries to describe it to you, at the two extremes, Christianity would describe it as a created man in his liking, or, at the other extreme, the Buddhists will say it's emptiness, and deities and so on. Neither of them can know for a fact, because it's a non-physical entity, and all of our perception is only physical, right? But having said that, I ventured out, and that event for me was sort of a liberation, because being in a Muslim community is quite a bit conformative. So if you let yourself out of the confinement, if you want, and then allow yourself to debate and discuss, I just continued to debate all the way, right? I said, so now I know there is something bigger than us, but did it talk to us? Did it communicate? Is what it communicated, is it, the Quran in Islam? Is it the Quran only? Are there other messages? And then I went on and studied all of them, like literally everything I could put my hand on. I think there has been two topics in my life that I never studied more. One was time as part of physics, and the other was spirituality in general. And I'll tell you, every one of them has so many beautiful nuggets of wisdom, but every one of them has clear examples of, whoops, this doesn't sound right, okay? And so accordingly, I think so when people ask me, what do you believe in? I say, well, I follow a religion called the fruit salad, right? Which basically is, if I give you a basket of oranges that has 12 oranges in it, 2 are amazing and 10 are rotten, you don't, whatever the ratio, I don't mean 2 to 10, you don't throw the 2 good ones. You still keep the 2 good ones, and then you get a couple of apples and a couple of bananas, and you make an amazing feast of all of the beautiful core nuggets of wisdom. And so I'm talking too much, but, I found...
I love it. I'm like, please, yes. And it's very on brand for you to study everything and like know the ins and outs of everything, which is so wonderful about you.
Because honestly, Sah, if you think about it, studying one of them only is a form of ego. Have you ever thought of it this way, right? It's like, if I define myself as a Buddhist, or if I define myself, and I'm not against anyone who does that, because there is so much beauty in each of them, then by definition, you've associated yourself with one ego, one form of identification. And I think the idea is, no, I am a seeker. I want to find in every one of them beautiful wisdom. Anyway, let's go back to reincarnation, because my brain works as a physicist, okay? And as a physicist, I struggle with the idea of chronological lives for one simple reason, which is the absence of time. Did you understand that? So when we look at time, in our physical form, we're governed by what is known as the arrow of time, right? 1990 is earlier than 2023. That's the arrow of time. Now, when you leave your physical form and you're out there in your spiritual form, which obviously is not part of this physical world, otherwise, again, from physics, you wouldn't have the ability to perceive time at all if you were stuck in time. The reason why we perceive time is our consciousness resides outside space-time. Now, if you think about that, then the idea of several lives becomes quite interesting. Why? Because how can you have several lives when all of space-time is one time? Do you understand that? For your non-physical form, there is no before and after. There is no I can come as Sah and then come again as the President of the United States, which you qualify for. But, there is no that. That doesn't happen in chronological order. So I sort of park the idea of reincarnation as what I call compartment 2. I can't prove for and I can't prove against. And by the way, does it matter? She's happy either way. You know what I mean? So in my mind, is if Ali came back, I'm sure he came back as a wonderful human being or a wonderful something, right? Mm-hmm. If he didn't, then I'm sure he's in a nice place because he was a wonderful human, right? So in an interesting way, is it relevant? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. I mean, it's very difficult to prove for or against any of it, but all of it is okay, I think.
I'm with you too. I mean, I feel like the reincarnation thing has like brought some degree of like refuge for me in the past, you know, like thinking about, you know, previous versions of me and reasons why I suffer in this way and that way, and why I, you know, like thinking like from a spiritual perspective, we are under the influence of like the trauma that has been unprocessed in our family tree. From a spiritual /, you know, Eastern Buddhist Vedic perspective, we are under the influence of our past lives. So kind of navigating like, what am I under the influence of? I'm under the influence of a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of violence, a lot of abuse, a lot of, you know, a lot of stuff that hasn't been processed. So I was like, okay, so it's really up to me to kind of like do the thing, to kind of end the cycles, to be the curse breaker, to be the one who kind of ends the cycles of suffering that has perpetuated in the previous, you know, processes that we now call Sah. But I don't know, your view of all this it's way more intricate than than mine. I kind of go with the kind of heart, you know.
That's
I'm
the
like,
better
I
part.
lead with that.
That's
I
the
lead
better
with
one.
that.
I can guarantee you that. Yeah, I mean, this is all you're known for, huh? The idea that the heart will lead, I think, is wonderful. I mean, it takes a physicist like me or a mathematician like me quite a bit of time to let that happen. Even though, of course, in my older years, I think most people who've interacted with me, especially if they interacted with me in person, they would simply say I'm all love, basically. That I'm all heart. Yeah, I have a very annoying physicist mind up there, but yeah, it's just in the background now. So what would you wish for? I mean, I'm talking to you because, believe it or not, I rarely come across someone who I know will enlighten me with something about my own loss. Okay, I've studied this deeply, but you seem to have an intuitive connection that's outside us. So, what would you hope for? You know, I'll tell you openly, you will feel the pain for quite some time. I probably believe you will feel less pain, but you'll feel the pain of missing her for the rest of your life. So what would be a dream scenario for you December 25th next year?
Good question. I mean, look, my biggest struggle right now is, and I might get emotional, start crying.
It's absolutely okay.
My biggest struggle right now, it's just forgiving the doctors and the nurses and for how they treated my mom during the last few days and hours of her life. And then that's a big thing that kind of takes space from when I'm about to fall asleep and as soon as I'm waking up. The two times that I really have practiced diligently to arrive at waking up open and inspired for the day and going to sleep less rigid and contracted. But those two times are the times where I get flooded with these painful memories. They're very textured. I notice my body, contracting, and I notice my breath, becoming shallow. It isn't a pleasant experience at all. So I hope that through the grief process, I allow the grief to wash, some of this anger and this like punitive approach that I have, that I want those doctors to suffer. I want those nurses to suffer. This like, it's the prison industrial complex is in our psyches, like anyone hurts us, we unconsciously want to hurt them back, or we do this in our minds, right? It's like, we are constantly punishing each other in very subtle or, or, subtle ways. And I think explicit ways. So I have this kind of thing in my mind where it's this punitive monster that wants those who didn't take care of my mom the ways I thought that she needed to be cared for, need to suffer. So I'm navigating this, releasing this punitive approach, enter into a restorative approach. I'm navigating, making peace with those memories. And what do I hope for? I hope that I get to continuously learn from the daily grief, from the moment to moment grief of not having my mom there, someone that like supported me from day one. And I do hope that she will communicate with me,
She will.
more and more. I hope that she will speak to me through the birds, through the sun, through the wind, through strangers. I hope that she will leave me messages, and I'm going to be walking through a bookstore and a book's going to fall out of the shelf and it's going to open at this exact page with these exact words highlighted there that were the exact words that her and I would communicate with each other. I'm just hoping for the unseen world to make itself known to me in a way that I know that my mom's still here with me. So that's my hope. And what happens when I die, maybe I want the Christian view where I am with her in heaven for eternity. Or another one, this is all the layers of it, right? You ask me this question, so I'm giving you the entire view. And the other one is that perhaps in a few years, I'm going to run into this young little person, and I'm going to see my mom in that person. And then I'm going to get this really deep, heart knowing that that is the reincarnation of my mom. And I get to see Patricia in a new form again, because even when I walked into the hospital, I did all the ritual things because I'm holding the belief that it's possible, and that that there's more to life than what meets the eye. So I don't know. It's a lot of all of this stuff that sounds poetic and interesting and intriguing, and then also just a lot of I don't know, a lot of like being at the edge, and just like not knowing, like, and I'm just there, kind of there.
I hope that your grief will turn into love. I have rarely met someone who's more capable of love, and it seems to me that this is not an interruption of your cycle. This probably is more an acceleration of your cycle. Yeah, I'm sorry for what they did, the doctors and the nurses. I really am. I think we shared that story, but it seems sometimes that that a journey needs to be continued, and there is that separation when someone gets on the train that starts a new story. I really hope that when we talk the next time, hopefully it won't be the end of the year, but when we talk the next time, that you will have multiplied more of you through that experience. It seems to me, Sah, that you've always been a mystic in a very unusual. You call yourself an artist, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Okay, that's the. You remind me. You know what a traveling dervish is? Mm-hmm. In Sufism, it's basically someone who takes a very, very, very unusual path through life. Choices that, and they don't do it because of ego. They do it for liberation. So basically to leave all of the norms behind. I don't know if you'd be open to tell me a little bit how you ended up where you ended up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much. How did I end up here? Wow. Well, in short, I'll start at a moment of rock bottom, because that was a very influential moment in my life. I had started this international fashion magazine with a couple friends, and I really thought I was like, oh my God, I found the thing that I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I I felt like I accomplished the American dream, right? Working with celebrities, making art every day, going to these shoots, traveling, looking at these beautiful clothes, like selecting who we're going to put in the magazine. It was this really amazing creative process that I loved. And meanwhile, throughout that whole process, I was, drinking every day, which is very no, it's very normal in our culture to couple glass of wine, maybe a couple beers, and you get a little high here and a little, bump of Coke there. And like, you kind of just go through life, and it's very sort of a normalized, in the culture that I was in New York City, in fashion. And still inside, like crumbling with like the highs of anxiety and the lows of depression. And the background noise of my inner world was always shame, meaning there's something fundamentally wrong with me. How could I distract myself from feeling these feelings? How could I distract myself from giving in fully to this narrative that I am fundamentally bad, so therefore I should not be here? So I built my life around distracting myself from feeling. And I built it in such a skillful way that people outside really thought I had done a great job. I'm 24 years old. I'm on Forbes. I'm on this, but all this like, stuff that looking back, I'm like, oh, poor thing. Trauma response is really working for you. Good job, trauma responses. The world thought you did it. You were doing it. You were okay. So I just give this kind of like psychological and somatic awareness of my inner world, just so you understand the depth of the rock bottom. So now fast forward to November 22nd, 2012. So end of 2012, I think there was a lot of, tribal cultures saying that was the end of the calendar year, meaning the world's going to end. I mean, a variety of different things. But that day, my business partner and best friend decides to buy me out of the company that I invite her to be part of. So the heartbreak was like enormous. And so I leave fashion and I try to get a job. I was like, oh my God, I've given jobs to so many people. I've like collaborated with so many people around this industry. So I try to get another job in the fashion industry as a creative director. And no, so many no's, nothing was coming up, nothing was happening. So I said, you know what? Excuse me, F this. I'm going to go to Florida, be close to my parents, and kind of like reassess. So I get this little house in Madeira Beach, like an hour from Tampa, Florida. And that's when I started to research, what is happiness? What is well-being? What's the purpose of human life? And I started to research these very simple things that are kind of like the driving force of our life. But I have to be fully honest, up until I was 27, I never once thought to question, is money happiness? Is success in this exact way that I'm living happiness? Am I happy? But, never really had this like depth of self-inquiry to question the structures that were imposed onto me as an immigrant, as a person of color, as a queer person, the layers and layers and layers, right? So it was that year, 2013, that I started questioning and researching. And then 2014, I go to India, to north of India, to Dharamshala. And,
Yes.
But before going to Dharamshala, I had this whole plan of studying with like South Indian gurus, South Indian saints. And then my dad walks into the house and says, you should go to the north. You should study Buddhism with the Dalai Lama. He lives in this little town. And I was like, Dad, what do you know? We've never had he's never spoken to me about religion in this way or spirituality in this way at all. So it was kind of like, okay. But I went in 2014 and then did one 10-day silent retreat in McLeodganj, this little village where His Holiness lives. And that just cracked me open. I heard this fundamental truth that we have this basic goodness, that this unborn mind, as Caverly Morgan was on a podcast recently, this Zen teacher, and she spoke about the unborn mind. I was like, wow, what a great term, this untouchable aspect of our beings that is benevolent and always good and peaceful and at ease and joyful and wise. So hearing that, but out of all these, beautiful words, the one that really struck me was like, we are benevolent beings at the core of our beings. We are basically fundamentally good. And it was something that I needed to hear. Because as I said earlier, like shame was like such a big curriculum in my life. And feeling like something fundamentally wrong was who I was at the base of my being. So hearing that was massive. And then another big thing that happened was meditating on our own death and doing like a 3-day, it wasn't a 3 long days, but it was like 3 evenings meditating on our own death. And that really propelled me to just question and really look like, am I dying filled with regrets? Have I made amends? Have I learned to forgive? What is forgiveness? Can I forgive? Do I need to engage with that? Have I lived the life that I want to live? And all those big questions came, flooding into that. And through that process, I was like, oh my God, I think I found the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. Is like, this is it. So I did, later that year, I did a 30-day silent retreat, the same one that I was just doing in this past December in 2022. And then during that 30 days, when I took refuge and I really bought into this view with the premises that if I take refuge and I follow these vows, no lying, no stealing, no killing, blah, 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 all these, like, some of these seem very simple, but it's really kind of like edgy to like not lie, not put people down, not put yourself down, not gossiping. And stealing isn't just the stealing of things. It's like there is this energetic, this psychological stealing that happens so often between friends and between communities. So questioning all of that and having that view, I said, okay, if I do all this and my life changes for a year, then I'm going to keep going on this path. But if it doesn't, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to like go back to the old ways, because that was at least some fun, Yeah, it was at least fun, and I looked, in my mind, I looked good doing it. So that's the kind of journey. It was like 2013 and 2014. And then, have gone back to India 8 or 9 times and kind of, just kind of kept going back and traveling to that part of the world. I keep wanting to do different things, but that part of the world just keeps calling me to like, there's more here to learn. And so that's kind of how it happened. And yeah, that's essentially, and then came back to New York, like being in and out of India for about 2.5 years, that first time, 2016, the fall of 2016. And then, it kind of just happened really quickly. I was very honest on social media about like my struggles with suicidal ideation, with depression, with addiction, with anxiety, all the demons that were visiting me, and then me befriending them and learning from them and having tea with them,
befriending them,
whatever language,
befriending them. That's such an interesting word.
Well, because we have to, right? Because if they're visiting us, it's like the Sufi poet says, Rumi. If they're here, they're here with a message. And if we push them away, we are saying no to a guest that we have invited to our house, And
Wow.
It's like really massive to think about, like, these feelings that visit us that feel really like a demon. They're so hard to be with. They're so hard to process and engage and look at. What if we open up to the view that they have been sent, that they have been invited by us? They might have just come at the wrong time in our view, right? But what if we treat every feeling that visits us as a guest that we have genuinely sat down and written an invitation to them to come have tea at our house? So that was what the process was like. It was like a really big, vulnerable share. People on social media felt like they were reading my journal, because that's what it was. I think putting stuff out there for me at that point was keeping myself accountable to being liberated and opening myself up to change. And so that's kind of how it happened. And then one thing led to another. You get asked to write a book, and you get asked to do this, and then it just all kind of goes from there.
It's going well. I mean, when you really think about it,
it's going really well, surprisingly well, and also so wild to have responsibility to this level, you know, where it's really wild to have this amount of responsibility to help people.
I don't think of it as responsibility at all, as a matter of fact. I mean, I struggled with that for a very long time, believe it or not. And now I'm like, no, it's a gift. I think we both agree, right? To find a path to somehow just make one person feel better. That's amazing, right? And then I realized at a point in time that perhaps I'm just relaying messages that are not really mine. I probably think you feel the same. It's either we learn this from someone else, or it's being sent through you to someone else. And I don't know. I think that feeling of responsibility, I take it seriously, very seriously. I still believe it or not, Sah, I still answer every single message. I mean, no, I can't say every single message, but probably 98% of all the messages I get on social media. It's a nightmare of a job. I swear to you. But I absolutely love it. And I don't think of it as a burden. I just simply say, oh my God, someone wants to talk to me. That's such a privilege, right? It's quite interesting when you think about it. But then your approach was quite refreshing, I have to say. Right? So if you don't mind me saying, being queer and being very open about it, being so flamboyant and artistic, I mean, the first time we met, I was like, oh my God, like this guy, like, look at this, right? And we're talking about deep Buddhist issues and, or topics and artificial intelligence. And you're like totally colorful and wonderful and laughing, and it's just amazing. And I think something caught up there. Like people were like, yeah, I can follow that guru. I like that guru, right? Did you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, look, thank you for naming that and for celebrating that. Yes, all of that. And I just want to say, like, the responsibility piece is just to make sure that I am like genuinely keeping my heart and my mind and my body and my words and my actions in the right place, really like constantly in that orientation of like what we say in the Mahayana Vajrayana Buddhist path, the Bodhisattva path, like how can my life be of service to other people? Every orientation of my inner and outer world be of service to others. And taking that vow really kind of like, it's a heavy lift and a big sort of thing to carry, So that's the responsibility, is just kind of keep doing that. Cause sometimes, I kind of just want to veg out and just, do nothing or look at other people doing different things with their lives. And I'm like, wow, remember when I used to get like drunk and high at the club? Wow, I miss that. I miss just like being like a mess in that way, And then I'm like, okay, I have a different mission in life. So the responsibility is just like that constantly remember that this life I have devoted to helping others while helping myself to truly become free. So it's a big lift that you understand. And, to go back to kind of like, I just wanted to point that out. So the queerness, I think it's a big thing because it's a big thing to see people celebrating this sort of path that this community that we're creating together. Because, when I was at those early years in India, I was trying to be like everybody else. I was very like, namaste, and something was beautiful and I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Something was sad, I was like, oh, that's sad. It was like there was not a lot of I wasn't very expressed. I wasn't very alive in the ways that I am alive today, and that I've been for a while, because I was afraid that was not acceptable in the spiritual space. I felt like I needed to do the things that people were doing in order for me to fit in. Essentially the same thing I did before, trying to like, play into the normalcy of society and kind of pass as heteronormative and all the things that queer people have to do. Now I was doing it in the spiritual space. Like, how could I pass as normal, so people would, and I did air quotes for everybody who's listening, how can I pass as normal? Because there's nothing, or there's no one who is normal. Normal is,
Yeah,
as
well
Gabor
done.
Mate says,
Yeah.
it's a myth,
Yeah.
right? So essentially what I'm saying is it took a while for me to like unleash my own true authentic self. It took a while for me to like celebrate my wildness, my queerness, my flamboyantness, my true inner artist. It took a minute for me to arrive at this place where I'm like, this is who I am. I am talking about deep things in a playful way, and that's my brand of liberation. Like it or not, that's what I'm doing with my little corner of the world.
Mm.
But it was a lot of pushback, a lot of these holy places, a lot of these ashrams and monasteries, and people. I write about this in my work too, having been like humiliated,
Have you
at
been?
a Dharma center in Bodh
Oh,
Gaya,
serious?
in yeah, it's like people are afraid of authenticity. It just triggers their inauthenticity. It triggers all the ways that they're not living out their truth. So when I walk into a place and I'm living out my truth, my expression, my queerness, my artistry, it shines a light and all the stuff that they're not willing to look at. So it became this thing in these holy places. So, that was initially I was like, oh shit, I shouldn't do this. I should stop. I should try to like fit in more. And then I was like, no, imagine all the young queer people of color who are looking up, who are wishing
Yes.
that they could arrive at these places and see someone that they felt represented in, or
Yes.
to listen to a Dharma that they can find themselves in.
Hmm.
Historically, the Dharma that has reached the West, or even when you go out to the East, a lot of the Dharma centers are packed with hetero cis white people.
Yeah.
So it's a very sort of, we have to realize that the Buddha was a brown man,
Hmm.
and it's a lineage of historically brown people, and in the West we have sort of whitewashed it, and through a lot of good has come from westernizing it, and the bravery of the white folks who ventured into India and Nepal to study this. And also we have to then teach a Dharma that's way more inclusive than the Dharma that's been taught before by mostly white folks in the last few decades. So my work is to really just queerify the Dharma and like make it more playful and artful, and keep the depth of it, obviously, and the profundity of it too. But it has to be delivered in a way that people like the person that I was, young seeker, can hear and can relate to, and not feel alienated and feel like, okay, here I am running away from Christianity, and now I'm finding a punitive God in all these people.
Yeah.
Like here I'm running away from this punitive approach to liberation, aka this God that punishes, into the Buddhist path. But now, instead of having a punitive God, I'm seeing that punitive God expressed in all these people who are saying that they're holy and saying that they're practitioners. So that's it. This is where I'm at. It's that
I love
expression.
you for that. I have to say, I absolutely adore you for doing this. I think religion goes wrong at two levels, right? One level is they sort of try to build a mold for for someone, and say that someone is simply the way we want you to look, the way we want you to behave, and if you're not behaving that way, then good luck. You're not one of the crew. You're going to either burn in hell, or you're going to end up with a lot of bad karma, right? And I don't believe that to be true at all. I had a conversation once, without sharing names, with a Muslim imam, so like a scholar, and he came to me and said, I can't go back to my home country. I can't. And I said, why? What happened? And he said, I'm supposed to teach the Quran there. And, people pray behind me, and I'm an imam and a leader and so on. And I suddenly realized that I like men. Okay? And I was like, it was the first time I was given this as a conversation. And I said, in my immediate heart, I was like, and what's wrong with that? And he said, Islam doesn't approve of this. And I said, but it also doesn't approve of lying. It also doesn't approve of, of usury and so on and so forth. And everyone who will ever judge you is doing one of those things, right? And by the way, those things are actually wrong. They hurt others, right? You have a choice in life to tell yourself, do I want to lose my entire connection with my spirituality because I am, I feel a certain way, or do I also want to be spiritual when I feel that way, right? And then, the second thing that religion sometimes does is it says, and by the way, if you're that person, okay, you can't even talk about spirituality anymore because you don't represent us. And I'm like, is this a football team? Like, what are we talking about here? There are so many people. I mean, statistically, I don't know the numbers. Of course, it's very hard to measure. But, we're talking about a good portion of humanity today that makes that choice, right? So what? Do we prevent them from talking about spirituality? If we ask them to talk about spirituality, they'll reach others who want to listen to them. Like, why are we preventing people from doing that? Why is it that we can take one point of life and say, look, if you wear a yellow jacket, you're not part of the team? Where did that come from? And I actually, one of the things that I really enjoyed the first time we met is you're wearing the yellow jacket quite proudly. It's like, you know what? And I know my Dharma. I know what I'm talking about, right? And I can make people feel better. And you know what? I can make people that you will never reach feel better. Okay? That's so eye-opening. And I think that's really where the change should start to come in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for naming that. That's so sweet.
It is the truth, man. It is the truth.
Yeah.
Our world has so many wrong things.
It's nice to hear. You have a lot of people listening to you, and you have a lot of influence, and that comes with the responsibility. And and thank you for celebrating, my little corner of the world. It's we have to celebrate when things are in alignment with the highest good of all beings. I think we're in the world right now where, looking at American news, it's, oh my God, I am like, it's so hard to just have a good day. It's just
it's crazy.
An ongoing nightmare of things happening. And then it's amazing to me. Amazing. I'm being simplistic and really like sweet about it. It's like devastating, like I work at a homeless shelter here in Venice, California, in Venice Beach in LA. And, just seeing the severity of their situation and neighbors wanting to push them out of the space of the neighborhood, because Venice has become this like fancy shishi neighborhood where everyone, is $5,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment now. So and then in this area of Venice, they have this like really, massive parking lot that's turned into this living quarters for people who are unhoused. And just seeing the kind of struggles that community goes through to keep that place going. Everyone who's marginalized, I feel like it's heightened. We're in a time where things are heightened. It's like there's more light and resources and potential, and it's also the shadow, the darkness is being exposed in such a massive ways that it's really hard to like go through a day where you're like, okay, cool, today was sincerely a good day all around. It's like saying that is so selfish, right? Because when we tune into the pain of the world, when we tune into the pain of being human, we look at the pain that's around the corner. And now I'm going a little bit of a rant here, but just hear me out for a second. This is something I've been talking to a lot of different spiritual teachers come on my podcast, talking about, self-care and personal development and feeling better about yourself and achieving your dreams. And I'm like, F all of that. If your spiritual practices and your self-care practices are not leading you to become an activist, then it's not spiritual. It's not spiritual at all, my dear. Personal development and spirituality, there's a big line in the middle. Personal development is about me, mine, and I. Spirituality is about we. How can we do better, feel better, create a better world? So I'm just in this other season of my life with my mom's death where I have no tolerance for people talking about manifestation and my life and my needs and me. I'm like, enough. Look at every single genuine ancient scripture. The common denominator in all of it is compassion. What does that mean? Care for yourself while caring for others. Care for others while caring for yourself. Lift someone else that will help to lift yourself. And people don't want to hear that because we want the pity party. We want to stay intoxicated in our own spiral. And I can only say this with the audacity that I have to say right now because I've been there. I have wanted to unalive myself for a long time. I have been an addict. I have experienced depression. I've experienced anxiety. I've experienced the depth of the valley of shadows. Like I've been there. And through the work of being there, you learn to see in the dark. Your eyes reacclimate and you start to be able to see, that it isn't as dark as we thought it was. It might just be a little shoelace in the corner. It's not a snake, that kind of thing starts to be a revelations that we have on the path. And then when we have these revelations, if you're not helping other people have these revelations, it's not the spiritual path. I'm sorry. And I'm just constantly saying that. And I have Zen teachers come on the show and they're very diplomatic, right? They're very diplomatic and they're very, and I'm like, I'm not diplomatic. I'm just tired of the diplomacy that we're going about. Liberation is not working. It's doing harm for a lot of people and it's keeping people with a lot of privilege and a lot of resources, feeling okay about keeping all the resources to themselves when that is not spiritual, period. I don't know another ways to say it, but anyways, whatever you said prompted me to say this and there it is, laid it out.
It's the biggest issue of our planet, honestly. It really is. There was a study once that, in Islam here in the Middle East, people are supposed to pay 2.5% in charity every year. 2.5%, yeah, correct. 2.5% of whatever you saved. So whatever you didn't use for a year, it's not your income. But if you had money in a bank and or jewelry or whatever, and you didn't use it for a year, you pay 2.5% of that in charity. And there was a brave person that once said, well, I did a calculation, and if every rich Muslim paid 2.5% of their savings as a charity, there wouldn't be a single hungry person on earth. Right? And here's the question. The question is, honestly, Sah, if I told you it's going to cost you 2.5% of your money next year to polish your shoes, right? Most people will say, yeah, no problem. Or to go to London, put my stuff in laundry or whatever. Yeah, I'll do that. People don't think that big of 2.5%, right? And yet when it comes to help others, like, just seriously, just take 1 or 2% of your savings, not of your income, and just give those away. Most people will go like, hold on. They got themselves into this. They are the reason why they're, homeless. What difference does it make? Seriously, I very often, actually, sometimes when people go into debate with me, I go like, okay, keep everything you want. I just want you to spend one night in January on the streets of New York, homeless. One night, okay? And when you're done with that and you've had the experience, if you don't feel the compassion, I don't know what you are. You must be a rock. But, but honestly, what's happening in our world is that this single idea of me, and I need to be better than my neighbor. It's not I need my neighbor to catch up. And it's so interesting how our world is ending because of that.
It's really awful. And thank you for speaking to that. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to that too. I think we really have to.
What would you ask people to do if people listening to us nod and say, yeah, this is something that I should pay more attention to?
I think I love the donating of the resources, and I think that's wonderful. And I also need a nervous system upgrade from people. I need a mindset upgrade from people. I need a somatic up level from
Yeah.
people, which means none of that was going to happen if you just send in a check. None of this is going to happen if you just put in your credit card and press enter to that charity, that organization. None of it will happen. You're going to talk about it at the dinner party later today to get some looks and some like, oh, good job. I'm so glad you did that. Or your partner may be happy for you. But that's not giving the somatic upgrade that we need. It's not the spiritual upgrade that you need and the world needs. That will only happen when you put your life in the line, which means go sign up to volunteer.
Yeah.
Go put your body in the line. Go get a nervous system upgrade. Go be around people in extreme despair and see what happens inside of you. Do you revert to a punitive mindset, which is very natural? It's a very natural thing to happen. Like, oh my God, these people are this and that. Like they shouldn't be allowed to this, like the punitive approach, right? Or do you feel completely scared that your life's more important than theirs? Or do you just completely shut down and run away? All the sort of normal fight, flight, or freeze approaches that we have towards all kinds of random things. If you truly want to get a glimpse of God, liberation, enlightenment, transformation, go put yourself on the line. Go be of service, and it's a variety of different ways. You can pack up granola bars in your bag and just hand them out to the neighbors who live on the street. Or you can actually sign up to do a 2 to 3 hour training and get your fingerprint scanned, so to see what kind of, just, it's a little bit of a process, right, to actually volunteer in an institution, but do it, or cook a meal. Me and my partner, we're not doing that right now. Ben is traveling, I was traveling, but cooking a big tray of mac and cheese and bringing to the community in Skid Row. So there's so many ways. There's 42,000 people unhoused in Los Angeles. That's insanity.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's insanity. That's like, it's really like, it's heartbreaking that we're turning a blind eye to human beings. Freedom is relational. Like, we have to understand that unless we're all free, we're not free. So if you don't put yourself on the line, and different schools of Buddhism say different things about that. But again, I practice Mahayana Vajrayana, which is a little different, which means that, unless we help others get free, we're not essentially going to unlock our true potential for our own freedom. And there's discussions on that, but that's my view. That's how I'm digesting the Dharma. That's how I am speaking about it. So my ask for everybody would be to go be of service. Go offer your time to those in need. And you're going to be surprised. That's going to be the biggest antidepressant dose that you've ever taken, like literally. And I'm not demonizing medicine. I love medicine. My mom was in chemotherapy and also doing all the holistic treatments that we can find. I'm all for it. And also, we need to know that, there's so many ways to find freedom, to get free, while helping other people to get free too. It's service across every religion, across every mystical path. It's service that will lead you there.
100%. So we haven't even started talking about your work yet. So let's just jump in. So you created the Sah method, the Somatic Activated Healing. What is that?
Thank you for bringing that up. So the Sah method was born out of, the way it was born was, what is it? It's not, I would just give you the background story, just for context a little bit. I would, do mantras, meditate, do breath work, and then I would dance. And I would put the dance video on social media. And a lot of people would be like, oh my God, I'm coming alive just watching you. Something is happening just as I watch you. And then I wasn't really realizing that at that point, there was like all these prerequisites or precursor to the dance. I would, do my prayers, my mantra, my meditation, my breath work before I dance. So I was like, oh, interesting. All of these practices together are what the Somatic Activated Healing method is. So long story short, I'm putting these videos out there, and then I get a message from Deepak Chopra's CEO in 2019. Yes, 2019. And they invite me to their office and they're like, can you teach this? And I was like, teach this? Like, I'm not teaching anything here. I'm just like expressing my own freedom, expressing myself here. But we want that. Can you do that? And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe, let me think about it. So then I have like maybe a few months before I'm on stage next to Deepak, who I've like looked up to, and I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, if you know a name in the spiritual space, most people know Oprah Winfrey and Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, whoa, epic. So I prepare I prepare what I thought was the method. Little did I know it was going to, you know, become this like very structured, very sort of this very specific equation for healing, which is now known as the Somatic Activated Healing method. Back then it was dense medicine. Back then it was like the Sah method, but the letters had no, they didn't mean anything. The Sah wasn't, the S wasn't for somatic, the A wasn't for activated, and the H wasn't for healing. But there's just like, here's my method. I'm just putting together these 4 practices that have historically, factually helped people across culture to become better versions of themselves. And I'm just putting them all together in this specific way. There's nothing new. What's new is just me putting them together in this specific way. These practices have research behind all of them to help. So fast forward, I'm teaching it on Chopra's Global's Instagram account on IG Live every Friday for a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
And that built this like momentum. And I really started to like learn, what is it that I'm doing? What is this practice actually doing for people? And I started to then create the sort of philosophy and equation behind the method, which essentially is teaching people to be in their bodies, to come home to their bodies, to get out of their heads and get back into their bodies. To the premises of it is that there is a top-down approach to healing and a bottom-up approach to healing, right? And I'm being simplistic here, but a lot of people are adopted the top-down, which is talk to your therapist, speak about your suffering, talk about it, and by talking about it, you're going to change how you feel. And therefore, if you change how you feel, you're going to change how you think. Therefore, you're going to change how you speak and how you act. Wonderful. That works. But also, if you talk to therapists, a lot of therapists right now, and there's a lot of research that shows where therapy and somatic work begins, where therapy ends, it's where we have to then go into the body and work with the feelings. Because a lot of times by talking about our suffering and talking about our stories, we are activating these memories, and these memories have a lot of emotional charge attached to them. So unless your therapist is giving you the exact tools to do somatic work, meaning be with the feelings, process the feelings, let go of the feelings, you're walking out of the therapy room, feeling like you have a change of perspective, linguistically, conceptually, a change of perspective, but the change hasn't happened somatically, it's not lived in the body. So it kind of goes away for a little bit, and then it kind of like resurfaces again, and then next thing you know, you're back with those same feelings, the same stories, the same memories still have that charge. So that's the top-down approach. Now the bottom-up approach, it's a somatic approach. It's what we're doing this in the Sah method, which means we're not engaging in stories whatsoever. Which the premise is that we don't have to remember what happened to us or what we did in order for us to heal. The result of trauma is in our bodies, is in the present moment, right here, right now. We don't have to remember exactly what happened, which means that stories are not needed. What's needed is an awareness of what's going on in the body. Simple practice. So when teachers who are now being certified in this method are practicing, it's when you're working one-on-one with clients or one-on-one with clients, that's when that kind of context happens. We're only getting a kind of like newspaper clipping of someone's story, never storifying or allowing them to go into that place, because the weight of the past is still in the present if you haven't processed it. So the premise of the work is to get people to track and trace and be with the feelings in their bodies as they arise. And through the breath, the affirmations or the mantras, the meditation, and the specific moves that I've created, we are creating a kind kind of a gateway for feelings to come up and go out. So looking at like research, there's research that shows that we have, way more emotions that I'm about to say, but based on research from the Center for Greater Good, the Science Center for Greater Good. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but this is the one out of Berkeley that I love what they're doing there. They said that we have an average 27 emotions. Every human being has. So I pared down the 27 to 20, and I created specific moves for those 20 emotions, 10 of them being shadow emotions, 10 of them being light emotions, the bottom of it being shame, and the top of it being enlightenment. And this is also based on the emotional guidance scale. I forgot the amazing dude who created that. So I have developed on specific things that have existed into creating these moves. So each of the moves are here to help people to activate those unprocessed feelings, those unmet feelings, and create the pathway for them to come up and out. So the Sah method is that it's a way for people to be in their bodies no matter what's going on, and to remind people that the way to heal is to not storify or conceptualize or think your way out of your suffering, is to process the feelings. Because when you process the feelings that are in your body, your memories, which is the reason why you don't consider yourself healing or healed or better, because they're haunting you still. And why is a memory haunt you? Because it has emotional charge. When a memory comes up and passes by, like every other thought in your mind, without an emotional charge, that's the work of the method that we're doing, is to process the emotional charge associated with these hurtful, painful memories that we have. So the entire journey is to just let go of these feelings. They're not necessarily associated with the specific emotions, specific memories. And by processing these feelings, you're then changing your relationship with those emotions. Therefore, you're becoming more present. Therefore, you can hear the world through your heart, not through your neurosis. You can speak to the world without the poisonous tongue that you may have had in the past, but speak from the heart. You can see the world without the polarized dualistic view that you've had, but now you can see the world through the eyes of love, through the eyes of the heart. So that's a very simple way of explaining what the method is, but that's essentially helping people to just be in their bodies and stop escaping the present moment, because we have been trained and colonized and indoctrinated, and really we've become prolific at multitasking, because it's a trauma response that helps us to stay out of our bodies, meaning stay out of feeling. Yeah. Which is very safe, but no healing comes from safety in this way. Of course, we need to enter safe environments to heal, but the kind of healing that we're talking about here requires you to step out of what you deem comfortable and safe, which means you're going to have to feel some shit that is not pleasant. So that's a little bit of it. I hope that makes sense.
Even the movement bit, the dance bit, it has lots of references in spiritual teachings, like, the whirling of the dervishes, or, the ecstatic dance of the shamanic sides and so on. There seems to be, as you rightly said, there is evidence that this works as a spiritual practice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all there. The only thing that I have done is kind of created some like language that feels a little new, but nothing is new under the sun, And that's something that I'm kind of like tired of it. Is sometimes, I was driving to meet Peggy and Jolene, the director of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's and Archbishop Desmond Tutu's documentary Mission Joy, driving to their house the other day, and I was just like drinking a matcha latte and like listening to Gregorian chants, which is what I love to listen to when I'm driving. Very Catholic of me, which is beautiful. They're beautiful songs. They're beautiful hymns. They really touch me in a deep way. But as I was driving, I was like, why do I feel the need to teach my own brand of compassion? Why do I have this desperate need to teach my own brand of liberation? Why am I so hung up on it? And it's so the opposite of emptiness. It's so the opposite of interconnectedness. It's so the opposite of the true path of liberation according to the Buddhist view. And I'm still doing it, So it's this kind of like weird thing that I'm like, why am I doing it? But then I have to do it because other people because we need queer Dharma teachers. We need queer spiritual teachers. We need my version of it is working. So it's this paradox where like, I'm so over this thing that I have to do my way because it doesn't exist, but it already exists. It has already existed. So anyways, I'm in a pickle. It's an existential pickle where I gotta keep going because I'm helping people to get free, and I'm getting free, and also just questioning it.
I struggled with that myself. I mean, first of all, it's so humble of you to keep saying it's always been there. It's always been there. If you're the source of it and it's helping people, then it's there because of you, right? That's the truth, right? I struggled with this myself for quite a long time. As a matter of fact, I avoided social media very heavily until 2019, I think. I had 3,000 followers on Instagram, and I had 80,000 followers on LinkedIn, but that's because of my corporate career, right, at the time. And I insisted that I didn't want to be out there at all, and my team would really push me. It's like, Mo, every movement needs a face, right? Humans don't want a piece of paper that has 4 words written on it. They want to know who said it and why they said it, and they want to see an example in them. And I still, like you, I really struggle because in my mind, what I teach is just common wisdom, really. It's like, I may have added a few little discoveries of my own here and there. And by the way, every now and then I discover that one thing that I thought was my discovery is, available in this teaching or that teaching, or that the, Stoics have done it before. It doesn't seem to be new, right? And yet you somehow have to put yourself out there. And as you put yourself out there, it's quite interesting because specifically for you, Sah, I think what ends up happening is people relate to you before they relate to the teaching, which I think is necessary, really.
And I got to keep the lights on, and I have a lot of adults who rely on me financially. So I got to keep going, older people who really don't have the means and the energy and the vitality that I have right now to keep going.
Yeah.
And I have to keep my lights on, their lights on.
Yeah.
So it's a big responsibility.
Back to responsibility, Mr. D'Simone. Back to the responsibility.
That's right.
Believe it or not, right. I struggled with that myself. Again, I mean, not for a public conversation, but I have a lot of promises to people who may not have life as easy as I had my life, that, next month will be okay, right? And for a very long time, when I go on my silent retreats and so on, I tell myself, how can you do this? You should be out there, you should be working, you should be doing something, you could get, a few thousand more, and that would help more people. And then somehow there was a point at which where I said, do you actually think you're making that money? That money comes to your bank account with someone else's name on it. And actually, I had a wonderful conversation with my mom around this. Because my mom, I call her my business manager. So she manages all of my giving effort. Basically, anything that goes for good is basically her work, which I think is the most beautiful partnership we ever had, is that she's constantly, using whatever I'm blessed with to help others. And, every now and then she would text me on WhatsApp or call me and say, Habibi, I'm going to spend this much, or I'm going to do that thing. And I'm like, Mom, why are you asking me? She says, it's your money. And I'm like, no, it's not. If it landed in your account, it has someone else's name on it. Okay, and it's a very interesting way, by the way. When how in financial planning they basically say take some of your money and put it in a savings account before you start spending for the month. And I realized at a very early point in my life that if you take a little bit of your money and give it to a charity account before you even spend it or think about spending it, the rest of the money is more than enough. It's quite interesting, huh? So you can get $1,000 into your account and then spend $1,000, and at the end of the month, you're out of dollars, or you can get $1,000, send 100 of them to a charity account, and then basically at the end of the month you'll spend 900 and you won't even feel the difference. It's quite an interesting way of doing it, but somehow it's not a responsibility. It is. I mean, to me, I think I push back because I feel the same feelings you feel. Huh? I keep reminding myself, no, it's a blessing that I'm, given the opportunity to be able to express my compassion. But if I'm in a wheelchair tomorrow and I cannot do anything, I don't feel bad that I am not doing it anymore. I was just doing it by accepting the gift. Tell me a bit, I mean, finally, we're going to talk about your book, the second book, right? Finally, which is out now. I haven't had the chance to read it. The title is fantastic. So you, Spiritually Sassy. And it is a very systemic way. So it's 8 ways to activate, or 8 steps to activate your superpower. Okay, 8 is very, very methodic here. This is not the Sah I know. It's like, okay, let's have bullet points and be very accurate. No art here.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Tell me a bit about it. Why did you write it, and why do you think it's different?
Well, well, thank you for bringing that up. The reason why I wrote it was out of that feeling and that experience that I had to like keep fighting my way into these holy places, and I had to like fight my way into every table that I wanted to be at. And I said, enough fighting to get a seat at the table. Why don't I just build my own table over here? Like, and I, put it next to theirs, and here's our table, and everyone is welcome, So that was it. Spiritually Sassy is that. It's saying that we don't have to keep fighting our way into the perceived version of spirituality. We can create our own version of it, which is still, filled with levity and profundity, and it's obviously playful and humorous. But so Spiritually Sassy is that. It's a lighthearted approach to liberation, to freedom. We go through, several different practices and several different. It's a practice book. So it's got a lot of self-inventory, self-analysis, accountability. And on the last chapter, it's about your expression in the world. It's about people not thinking that they have to become a spiritual teacher or a meditation teacher or a wellness writer or whatever it may be, or start a charity or open a hospital. They can do what they're doing as long as they are in touch with their hearts, which means that they have done a lot of self-revelation work, self-analysis work, but their expression in the world is coming from that genuine place, from that selfless place. And I believe if people do things from that place, if you are a jewelry maker, or you're making food, or you're building a home, whatever it may be, I think there is a sort of this energetic exchange that happens. If you are a jewelry maker and you make a beautiful earring from that place of like, may this be of benefit to the world, may this inspire the world, and let this be like a reminder, a symbol for liberation, for happiness, for joy, for what's possible for people. When someone wears it, and that earring has infused that kind of intention, I believe it can unlock symbolically for other people who are looking at it, this potential, this gateway, this path for others. So I emphasize that a lot in the book. And one part of the book that I want to speak about too was the chapter that I wrote that was what sold the book to Sounds True. The publishers really loved it, was talking about forgiveness. I think a lot of people are very afraid of that and are very sort of shy away from it. And it's such a misunderstood practice. So in I think it's chapter 4, I speak about how vital it is for you to learn to forgive, as if you really want to advance spiritually and on your just if you want to like be more at home in your body and more at home in your life, you got to make peace with your past. So it's I guide people in this like writing ritual for them to write these letters. And I think a lot of people think about forgiveness. This is one thing I'm going to say is, I think a lot of people think about forgiveness as something to do with between you and the other person, the ones that you've hurt or the ones who've hurt you. But the ways I speak about it, it's a process between you and you, meaning your mind, your body, your heart, and your past and your perception of it. So making peace with that. So there is this energetic shift that happens on a field that we don't have access to see with our eyes. But maybe you can speak about that field. It's very on brand for you to talk about that field. I guess they call it quantum field, or I don't know, something. But yeah, I say that once we have a revelation from our side, it is on this field where I've seen many times happen where I have people in retreats or in my own life when I have forgiven myself for the ways I've harmed another person, or I have forgiven someone else for the ways they've harmed me. And then, months or years or a week or a few days go by and I get a point of contact from that person.
Yeah.
And so forgiveness is key. In the book, it's the halfway mark, because for you to go to the next levels and the next things, you got to do that deep work of saying stop to the cycle of harm, stop to the cycle of pain, and then reminding yourself and others that what you've done isn't who you are at the base of your being. Trudy Goodman was on my podcast a couple of days ago, and she says, there's a lot of things that people do that are unforgivable, but no person is unforgivable. What they do is unforgivable. Well, who they are is not unforgivable. So that working with that view where like guilt shows us that we feel bad about our actions and shame shows us that we feel bad about who we are. So in that chapter, we're kind of dismantling this guilt and shame idea that our actions are not who we are at the base of our being. Our mistakes are not who we are at the base of our being. So kind of dismantling that for people and helping people to just like really name their pain and name their struggles and name their guilt. And through that process, they can, have a revelation. So that's a little something about the book.
That's a lot of things about the book. Yes.
I'm saying a lot of something because it's like 15 minutes of me talking about it.
No. I mean,
a year-long process.
That in itself requires a full podcast, I believe. And it's quite timely, I think, with your journey of healing for this year. I think that's definitely something that, it's interesting how the world, how life works sometimes. Life gets you to a point where you have that tool. In the Middle Eastern religious view, basically, actually more in Islam, I think it's said that you are never tasked with a task that you're not capable of. Okay, that you get the task. It's a little stretching. It's not in your comfort zone, but you can. If you stretch yourself, you'll get there, and the tools will be there for you. And so in your case, the tools have been written by you. So there you go. There you go, my dear friend.
Do the work. Yeah, do the work. Read your own book.
Exactly. It's quite interesting for me how that journey never stops. Really, it's quite interesting because now I'm old, and I still sit with myself literally on a weekly basis and say, oh my God, I did not know that about me, right? Oh my God, I need to do this work. Oh my God, and it's, of course, those things are still big in magnitude, compared to how far I've come, with where I am right now. They're still significant, but in the past, I would have never uncovered the need for them because I had other work to do. And, I'm in a very good place, but hey, wouldn't it be amazing if I did this as well, or if I learned that as well, or if I managed to flow with this a little better, and so on. I don't want to take more of your time. I think this was such a wonderful conversation. You constantly reaffirm how much I love you. You're such a wonderful human being. And you're so open and genuine and authentic and fun to be around. It's just easy, honestly. You make it look like, yeah, we can We can all do this. It's not that difficult. And I think that's really what's inspiring about what you do. I always close with one question, your secret to happiness. Do you have a secret to happiness?
Oh my goodness, my secret to happiness. Wow. Do I have a secret? No, I don't have a secret. I mean, what I do have is these days, it's like I choose to be in my body, you know.
Big
I
one.
choose to remind myself to be in my body. And it's really hard to be present in your body. It could be excruciating to be present
Tell me about
and
it, man.
aware of it. Wow, I'm alive. I'm in this body. So that's my secret to happiness. It's like stay in your body, even if it feels like a hell realm, you know, and freedom will come from that.
That's a very big one, believe it or not. Less spoken about because I think most of our teachers are not even that good at it. Or many of our teachers are not even that good at it. I definitely am not the best at it, I'll tell you openly. I mean,
How old are you, Mo?
I'm now, are we going to say this publicly in front of all my listeners?
Is
Anyway,
that okay? I'm sorry. I'm
no,
always curious.
no, it's good.
I wanna age and be and be like, you know, I'm curious, and I want to have you back on my show to ask you so many things about life. And you said I'm old now. You named it, so then I'm taking the invitation to ask you. That's why.
I'm old. I'm not physically old at all. So I'm 56, right? I'm not physically old at all. I feel 34. Okay, and people who are close to me say, "Oh no, you're a lot better than 34." Right? I'm not old in my mind at all. Okay. You know, I'm very, very liberal and very open and very childish and playful and silly. I'm really silly. Like, I'm really silly. Don't say that to people who are listening to us on the podcast. People, I didn't say I'm silly. I'm very wise. No, but truly, I mean, I think that some of the wisest people I've ever met, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for example, their inner child is very alive. But I will tell you openly, Sah, I feel I have lived so much. So much. It's quite something, actually. I feel I lived in this life alone, probably 70 lives. And actually more and more and more. I have seen so many experiences. I have seen every kind of pain, every kind of joy, every kind of uncertainty. And so there is a very unusual feeling of age in me. I feel several hundred years old. Mm-hmm. It's a very unusual feeling, and it's starting to dawn on me more and more and more, because very rarely is there anything that feels new. Okay, and it's a very unusual place to be. Of course, the curiosity is still there. I'm very, very curious. But yeah, it just, I think I'm so present in those lives as well that I remember every single one of them so clearly that it feels like several lifetimes. It's a very unusual feeling. And it's been dawning on me more and more in the last couple of years. It's not a health issue. It's not an age, you know, age is not slowing me down at all. As a matter of fact, I'm extremely fast. I just feel that I've lived so much. Mm-hmm. It's very strange. Mm-hmm. But it's also very interesting that you ask about what it's like to be aging, because I remember vividly, I was 42 when I went to my mom and I said, "Mom, why didn't you tell me that all of this was going to happen?" You know, there is a certain pattern to life, huh? Especially when you're, you know, when you're in love and at work and in family and so on. We think that all of our lives are different, but there are very, you know, global patterns that we all repeat. And I said, "You knew this was going to happen. You knew this, you know, that I was going to work really hard and I was going to be successful and then it was going to feel empty. Why didn't you tell me beforehand?" And she, you know, in a very typical mom way, she said, and where would the fun be? I was like, "Oh, who wants the fun?" Like, I wanted to shortcut those, you know, learnings. And she was spot on, actually. That yeah, the
So
fun
sweet.
is in living it, in experiencing it, and feeling it, even if it's
Yeah.
painful. That's where the fun is.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for saying all that. I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to reflect one thing and then we'll go. I love I feel like I've seen it all and I'm also still curious.
Oh
That
yeah.
is so profound. So thank you. Because that is a lot of people are hung up on, I've seen it all. Bye. I'm jaded. Now, what you
Oh
said in
no,
that
no, no,
same
no.
breath, in the same sentence, I've seen it all and I'm still curious. That is so deep. And we could spend a whole nother hour just talking about that because that paradox is profound.
It really is what life is about. We know nothing at all, Sah. We've seen nothing at all, right? There has never been an experience that you lived twice, ever. Okay? Even though they seem the same. Oh, I dated the same kind of person and
Mm-hmm.
she did the same thing. No, not at all. You were a different person. She was not exactly the same. The experience was totally different, only if you pay attention, right? Only if you're
Mm-hmm.
deep enough to actually recognize what's happening. Every meal has its own subtleties. Every time you listen to your favorite song, it's playing on Spotify the same exact song, but it's not the same because it's mixed with your emotions and your current state and the temperature of the room and the time of the day and your memory. It's never the same, and you can savor every single one of them. It's absolutely mind-blowing how rich this life can be.
Mm-hmm.
I
Wow.
love you.
Thank you.
I
I
really
love you
do.
too. Thank you so
I think
much.
you're
Oh
an
my
amazing
goodness.
human being. I'm very, very grateful that you came to join me. And I would love, love, love for us to keep the conversation. You're such a wonderful human.
Thank you. Same. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for all of you listening, I hope you felt this. I ignored you this time. I didn't have you in mind. I wasn't talking to Sah for you to listen to his wisdom. I was talking to Sah because this is someone that I truly admired the first time I met. And I just wanted to get to know him. And you happen to have been on the other side of the camera. I hope you enjoyed getting to know him as much as I did. What a wonderful human being. I hope that you learned in your heart that there is no specific mold that we need to fit in to be spiritual. There is no specific mold that we need to be to fit in to teach someone something. As a matter of fact, for most of us, there is one thing or a few things that are super unique about us, and if we live them fully, then we can help our world. I would ask all of you to find the compassion in your hearts to send wonderful positive energies for my friend here. You don't understand what it's like unless you've lost someone that you love dearly. So I will ask all of you to send him positive energy, to heal, to send him positive wishes, to send him positive prayers. This is the least of your compassion, is to wish in your heart that another person goes through his journey with ease. Whatever it is that you're doing this week, I will remind you one more time that life is lived a lot better when you slow down every now and again. So whatever it is that you're doing, regardless of how busy you are this week, find a tiny bit of time to slow down. I love you all for listening, and I will see you next time.